can you talk a little bit about the suffering of animals? The suffering of animals, we learn in the hadith that even animals on the day of judgment, there will be a special hisab for them. And they will, if dhulm was done to animals, if injustice was done to animals, even they will be given a type of reward. Now, what that reward is not told to us. But the Prophet ﷺ literally said that on the day of judgment, ultimate justice will be shown, so much so that one animal that unjustly beat another animal, and he mentioned a horned goat attacking an unhorned goat. He did not mention a lion attacking a gazelle, because as I explained, the lion attacking the gazelle is the right of the lion. There's no injustice here, right? And there's no evil taking place. This is the world, the world that Allah created. But there is injustice between species sometimes. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the goat that was beaten up, that didn't have horns, that was beaten up by the goat that had horns, it will get justice on that day. Now, what that will look like is beyond what we know, but there will be. So we have to trust Allah that even animals will be given some type of compensation for what they're facing. Question here, okay, marriage issue, but it's related to this. On the specific point you mentioned of how good can be seen through bad, like the example of the first marriage going bad so that the second can be better. Often arguments are brought up about this being way too optimistic, almost delusional. So as Muslims, to what extent do we try and make sense of our trials? Do we accept and continue as is, or do we look for wisdom within it in such an optimistic view? It's a case-by-case basis. I think what you're asking is, when do we move on and give up a marriage or situation versus keep on trying? If that's your question, that is a separate issue to what I'm saying. Because no matter what you do, you must always expect that there is greater good for you in any decision that you sincerely make. And again, the greater good doesn't necessarily mean that life will be easy. I never said that. The greater good, I explain what it means. The greater good is, it could be the akhirah, it could be sabr and iman, it could be wisdom, it could be something in this world that is other than, what you're facing. And again, this is just the reality that sometimes you get greater good in terms of appreciating other family or friends that you wouldn't have appreciated because of one relationship that's not that good. So a negative in one part will bring out a positive in another. And that's what you really have to understand, that if you're asking about whether you should stay or continue trying, this is something that is not related to theodicy. And it goes back to your best judgment of weighing the pros and cons and taking advice from your family and friends and praying istikhara to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has nothing to do with theodicy. Whether you decide to stay or you decide to leave, all of my points of theodicy will still apply. Okay, so that's a separate issue altogether. Question here. That you stated that theodicy is a frequent topic in the Western philosophical tradition that borrowed a lot from the Greeks. However, the Muslims also inherited a lot from the Greeks. So why wasn't theodicy discussed that much amongst Muslims? So not everything that was discussed by every philosopher was imported. And I don't have a deeper answer than this. All I can tell you is that the interest that the Western world gave, we don't find it replicated in our earlier scholars. I can't answer more than this, but it's a good question, and it's definitely a question that maybe some of you should do some research on. So question here. So now we're going to general questions. Okay, so let's move on to general questions. In societies where it is polite to bow to other people, what should we do? Okay, general question. We teach them that it's not a part of our culture and we can do something else instead. So for example, you may give a gift, or you may just do something else and say that it is not a part of our culture. My apologies, and this is something that we have to learn to be firm about. We don't compromise our religion about clear haram and halal. There's no compromise here unless there's a strong, if you're awkward, everybody's drinking and they all give a glass to you, like, oh, I'm awkward, you have to drink. Astaghfirullah. I mean, no, you have to teach them, we don't do this. Sorry, I don't drink. There has an element of, and bowing down to somebody, obviously it's not shirk if you do it out of respect, but it is haram. And so we do not do this. Somebody by the name of Loyal Shrimp says, is it permissible to kill animals? That's your Loyal Shrimp. So is it permissible to kill animals for research purposes? I'm going to be blunt here and say the vast majority of scholars would definitely say it is allowed if the purposes are worthwhile, i.e., you're trying to cure cancer. You have to try it out on animals. Yes, it is the dignity of an animal is there, but it does not equate with the dignity of a human. There's a hierarchy of dignities. And we're very clear about this. Animals are not the same karama as mankind. There's no question about this. And that is why we're allowed to hunt them. That is why we're allowed to slaughter animals. We're allowed to slaughter animals. And guys, again, we have to be very clear here. Listen, I mean, I'm all for contextualizing our classical tradition. I'm all for it. But that doesn't mean we catapult, we capitulate. Sorry, we not catapult. We capitulate to modern sensibilities, Just because the West has its views, we have to be careful and do case by case basis. You are allowed to slaughter an animal not because you're dying out of hunger, just because you're desiring to eat chicken. You all have chicken nuggets all the time. Where do they come from? Okay. You don't have to say, oh, I'm starving and I don't have a vegetarian option. No, you're allowed to slaughter an animal, take an animal's life because you prefer to eat that animal than vegetarian food. That shows you your desire to have a meal actually allows you to take the life of an animal that Allah has created. So your desire to do research to protect human life, without a doubt, if it is done properly for the right reason. So, for example, our scholars would say, research that is done like for stuff that's not necessary or needed that might torture an animal. No, you don't do that. And killing an animal for no reason, like what happens in Spain with the bullfights and whatnot. That is absolutely haram. That is torture. Allah's curse is on that because you're torturing an animal for no reason. But to slaughter an animal for food, that is not torturing. So you have to be clear in this regard. And yes, it would be permissible to do so. Question here. What should a Muslim do when a birthday party is held at work? Eat double cheesecake. No problem, inshallah. Okay, listen to my lectures about birthday parties, guys. There's nothing wrong with birthday parties. Okay, I've said this very publicly. Those who say birthdays are haram, I strongly disagree with them. It's just an ada. It's a cultural thing. There's nothing right or wrong. What happens within it, if there's haram in it, like sharab and that, then yes, you don't do that. But a generic festival, if you buy a house and you throw a party, if you graduate, throw a party, if the world, if 365 days goes one more time around, the sun and it's your quote unquote birthday, you want to celebrate, yeah, it's up to you. I mean, it's a trivial thing. Don't bring religion into it. It's not anything haram in this regard. So don't worry about that. Question here. How many minutes left? Oh, 1 minute left. Okay. Let's see. Very quickly. How can we reconcile living in a land that was stolen through ethnic cleansing, meaning in America here? Should we make the U.S. our home or go back to other Muslim lands or some hybrid way? I've spoken about this in much longer lectures. It is not obligatory to live in America, brothers and sisters. You may live wherever you want, but please do your research and please understand the only people that talk about hijrah are the ones that have never made it. Our parents came to this land. None of them talk about hijrah because they know the reality of living overseas. We have a very utopic, idealistic understanding of life overseas. Life overseas might have less problems in some areas, but it has a long list of problems that you would never faced in this country. Corruption, direct corruption. Imagine you have to bribe every person you meet. A level of racism. America's racist, but the type of racism you're going to find in many Muslim countries will disgust you to the core. Right? You're gonna find open like soft slavery going on in many countries, many Muslim countries. You're gonna see that. You can do nothing about that. You're gonna again, with utmost respect. I'm not trying to patronize you. I've lived in other lands. Believe you me, and I'm much older than you. I have dozens, maybe even hundreds of friends and acquaintances that have lived overseas, thinking that they're gonna live a better life. None of them that I know thought that they had a better life overseas. Money, yes, but quality of life and Islamic activism over here. But in the end, live wherever you want. It's all open land, wherever you can worship Allah. I will see you next week, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.